lot of shame. I was born in Africa, moved to the UK when I was a kid. We were like the black poor family in our area. And in 1994, there wasn't really any other black families in the southwest countryside of England. That plays a role because it makes you, I think, have an over-index towards like validation and fitting in and being like your rich middle white class friends and chemically relaxing my hair and wearing the skinny jeans and listening to like Arctic Monkeys, even though I had no interest in the Arctic Monkeys, and still don't, but you know, I respect them. And what else was important? Really bad in schools, like couldn't pay attention. Turns out I have ADHD, which like apparently is obvious now. But I'm more like, it doesn't mean that it means that I get like a really obsessively focused on things. I thought ADHD was like you can't pay attention to anything, but actually it's I can't pay attention to things I find really boring, which means that in school I was expelled, then they unexpelled me because I made the school a lot of money. That my headmaster was on a TV show in the UK and said this. He said we unexpelled him because he made the school a lot of money, because in my free time I was running these businesses. And I think maybe the most important thing is my parents weren't around, so it meant that there was this shame and then this big void of independence. And you have to do something with that as a kid. You have to run an experiment. You have to alleviate your own shame. So that's when I started selling things in the house and selling a few things that belonged to my mum. And then that's, you know, I could buy things and that alleviated the shame. So that did two things. It taught me that there's actually not a lot between any idea you have and the realization of that idea, which is like a really unbelievable lesson to learn at 14. That you can like have an idea that you want to get on the ski trip with your rich white friends, and it costs £700, and you don't have £1 for lunch, let alone £700, and you can find out a way to get the £700. Is like a really unbelievable thing to learn at a young age. And I think that's the most important thing, is that I think I have a bias towards believing things are possible. And then through time, if you want to know like why I am the way I am now in terms of analytical, I've just learned that whenever I find a principle, to really hold on to it. And what I mean by principle is like when something holds to be true over time and in multiple contexts, I get really like attached to that. I actually was speaking to Ray Dalio this morning. He was on the show this morning, and he's the guy that wrote the book on principles. And he says the same thing. He went from being broke to the world's biggest hedge fund. I think he's worth 15 billion. And he says the same thing. He says life is about identifying principles, going through your day, reflecting on what happened, and then writing down the truths that appear to be true, getting as close. And he actually, funnily enough, I didn't even realize this, but he said to me, the other thing is you reflect and you need to get as close as you possibly can to reality. And what he's saying there is what I said earlier about not being romantic. He goes, you have to be, and think about this guy. He built the world's biggest hedge fund and is worth $15 billion. The hedge fund, I think, is worth hundreds of billions, Bridgewater. He says you have to reflect and then get closer to reality. And you have to realize that I'm highly emotional, highly biased, highly insecure. We all are. And that's going to get in the way of your potential. So one of the great things that I did at 21, 22 years old is every single day at 8 p.m., I said to myself that I was going to write a tweet and post it. Now, I thought I was doing that to build a following, and it built a following, which is great, which then gave me a platform to launch the Diary of a CEO. But the more profound thing it did is it meant that I went through days like today, and then at the end of the day, I had to condense everything I'd learned, the most important thing I'd learned, into 140 characters. And if you've listened to Richard Feynman, the physicist, he says that to truly understand something, you have to be able to condense it so much so that you could, and simplify it so much so that you could teach it to a 14-year-old. And that's what I was accidentally doing at 22 years old. So I wish you could meet me at 18 years old. Because like terrible ideas, clueless, university dropout, parents aren't speaking to him, shoplifting food to feed himself. If you'd asked me anything about marketing or anything, terrible ideas. My friends who were there take the piss out of me. They remind me of these terrible ideas I had. But that process of self-reflection on a frequent basis, and especially if you publish it, which means you get feedback, which helps to refine the idea again, is, I think, the most underrated self-development idea that nobody seems to talk about. Every single day, write in your diary, condense it, summarize what you've learned, and then it means when people ask you questions on stage, you have really concise ideas that you can swing to.
Mm. So one thing I'm hearing from that also, from who you were growing up, is a bit of something that I carry, which is a scarcity mindset. Do you feel that? So like that drives me quite a bit. I think it drives a lot of creators. And I think it's why the game, especially of the analytical form of content creation, fills you up, because you can get an abundance or a relative abundance of something: views, validation, money, comments, engagement. You can get a relative abundance. So I'm curious, because one of the headlines we all read about you this year is you turned down $100 million. So when you come from that level of scarcity and you get approached with building a show at the scale of your show, and then someone comes and goes, "I'll give you $100 million, Steven," and you go, "No, I'm good." What's the principle driving that, when what I'm hearing is a kid who grew up with a bit of scarcity?
Yeah, so there's several layers of context here, so I'm going to try and knock them all off. So in terms of like the offer that we received,